Good morning, everybody, and thank you for connecting on Facebook and on YouTube for the class. And we have some people directly on Zoom. So happy Friday. I hope that you will have a very good weekend. The weather today is very good in Dublin, and I hope that you will have a very good weekend. And today we have a similar structure compared to the other days, and hopefully you can learn some vocabulary, you can learn some expressions, and that's the intention of the class, to try to help a little by little, because it's a long process to really understand English perfectly, and to use English, it's important. So little by little, we will try to help, and that's just the objective of the class today. So you can see here is the agenda. So we have a little introduction document for just to show you. So for a very little time, I will show you the introduction document. And then I have two possibilities, maybe to begin with an article is the first possibility, and the second possibility is to continue with the phrasal verb list. On the left, you can see the plan for the week. So this is week 16, and in the morning, we have the speaking classes in the morning at 9 o'clock, and they're interesting, and it's a good opportunity to start the day speaking English. And now at this time, we begin the free classes, and today at 4 o'clock, we have a specific webinar dedicated to business English. So today at 4 o'clock is a specific class dedicated to business English, business, and that might be interesting for some people. So you are welcome to attend if you want. So that's the first thing. Social media. If you want to connect on social media, you are very welcome to join onto Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, the typical channels, and you are very, very welcome to join if you want. Also, yeah, that's the plan. The dog I have as well. As I said, everything is free. This class is free, but at the end, if you want to make a small contribution, you are very, very welcome. The details are here if you want to make a small tip, and that's the most relevant information to transfer the tips, okay, if you need. And the mouse, so I think you maybe were watching yesterday, we had a little mouse in the garden, and then he went to the house. But finally, I think we captured one, and but last night we had another sight, so we saw the mouse again in the house. So a bit stressful for a lot of people, but they're harmless, no problem. So we begin, I suppose, with the document. This document is the key document. It's the most important document when you learn English. So if you have a book, maybe you have a book, an English book, and it's important to check your English book regularly to refresh the grammar, to be very clear with the structure of English. That's very, very important for everybody. And at the beginning of the class, that's my technique and that's my plan, to just show you the foundation structure and the most important document. So for me, there are three sections. The first section is use of English. The second section are the different tenses. And the third section is just grammar topics in general, okay? So first, use of English. Basically, this section is very, very important for different accents. People speak very different around the world. Phrasal verbs we saw yesterday. So there's a list of phrasal verbs that are very important. We have a lot of phrasal verbs. Idioms, we have a lot of idioms. Conversation, it's necessary you practice conversation, and pronunciation sometimes is difficult. In English, I try to help with pronunciation. The different tenses, here is a list of the different tenses that you need to be familiar with when speaking English. For example, do you speak in the present, the past, the future? In this area, do you speak in the simple, the continuous, the perfect, the infinitive, the conditional, the active, and the passive? So this area of tenses is very, very important that you know exactly the importance and the significance of the vocabulary here, because that's the foundation and that's the base of the language. So it's really important. Grammar, the other grammar topics, for example, a noun, an article, a countable, uncountable noun, an adjective. Those four areas are very important. Also the idea of comparative and superlative, adverbs, modal verbs, prepositions. Here we have possessive adjectives, possessive pronoun, and object pronoun. So that's very important, particularly for masculine and feminine. His bottle, her bottle, give the bottle to him, give the bottle to her. The bottle is his, the bottle is her. So that's very, very important, the detail, that people are clear with that area. The difference between this, that, these, and those, the difference between another, other, the other, and the other is important. Creating the question, suffixes and prefixes, conjunctions or linkers, and vocabulary. So vocabulary is important to grow, and the best way to grow your vocabulary is to read books, read magazines, read as much as possible to learn more vocabulary that is specific, and also to refresh your grammar and to see the grammar in practice. Okay, writing, you need to try to maintain your habit of writing, because it's important in business, it's important in real English, in real situations. You need to use your writing regularly, and that's a big part. Also, exams. English exams are very popular. For example, the Cambridge exams, first certificate, advanced certificate, proficiency certificate are very popular, and the IELTS exam is very particular, and we have specific groups dedicated to helping people prepare for the exams as well. Okay, so that document is very important for me. Now the option is between the phrasal verb list and the article from the newspaper, but today I think I'm going to continue with the phrasal verbs. Yesterday we did a lot of phrasal verbs, but really they are so important, and for this reason I will try to continue to explain the phrasal verbs. Okay, so I'll just close this document, and here, yesterday, the last phrasal verb we explained was to take up, and that means to a few possibilities. Here it's to occupy space, so this chair is taking up a lot of space, and the significance is this chair is occupying a lot of space. For example, in your routine, exercising in your routine takes up a lot of time, it occupies a lot of time. The second possibility of the phrasal verb to take up is maybe to start, take up a new hobby, take up dancing, take up swimming, and it means to start the new exercise, to start the new hobby. The third possibility is to take up the debate with another person another day, and the fourth possibility is to accept an offer. So I take you up on this offer. So you give me an offer and I take you up, I accept this offer. So you can see the incredible flexibility of phrasal verbs and the incredible use that we have of phrasal verbs. So for this reason, it's key. The next verb is to talk. Okay, and we have a lot of probably expressions with the verb to talk. The first possibility is maybe talk back. So this is maybe in relation to school. So the teacher is explaining to the child the information, and the child talks back to the teacher. So it's possible literal, no problem. But usually it's associated in a negative situation. So the teacher is maybe criticizing the boy or the girl, or punishing the boy. In English, we say to give out. So the teacher is giving out to the boy, and the significance is maybe punishing. Okay, castigar in Espanol, punishing or complaining, and that's very important. So in that situation, the teacher is giving out to the boy or the girl, but the boy talks back, and it's usually negative with attitude. Okay, so if the boy talks back to the parent, the child, the girl talks back to the parent in a negative sense, like cheeky, it's come because a cheek is this part of the body, or the face, this is the cheek. Okay, and if you are cheeky, it's como tienes mucha cara in Espanol. Okay, so it's like bold behavior, bad behavior. So a very cheeky boy or a cheeky girl could be negative. Usually it's negative, but it also could be maybe funny. So if he's a cheeky boy, he's very funny, very entertaining. But usually cheeky is maybe rude behavior and bad behavior. Okay, so in this situation, it's very typical for the child to talk back to the parent in a negative situation. And that's the, here's the perfect explanation: to respond in an impolite way to an adult. And children should, remember, should is the modal verb for recommendation or advice. And this sentence is a recommendation. So children, and remember, one child, two children, one child, three children. Okay, so it's singular, and irregular is irregular. Sorry, the plural is irregular. So children should not talk back to their parents, a very typical example. So that would be the first significance in relation to the verb to talk. We also have another possibility in expression: to talk rubbish. or to talk garbage is when somebody is talking with something that's not true or nonsense. Okay, so if you are talking garbage, what you are saying is not the truth. It's a lie. Okay. And I suppose the other situation with the talk is the preposition. Okay, so for example, we normally say the preposition to talk to my friend, and that's just a typical preposition to talk to my brother, to talk to my family, to talk to my friend. And remember, we have the same with the say to, but the difference with the preposition is in the verb to tell. Okay, so the verb to tell, there's no preposition. I tell you, you tell me, I talk to my friend, I say to my friend, I speak to my friend. So tell has no preposition. That's the big difference, okay? So I suppose that's important to remember. There is another phrasal verb, to talk up, and maybe we've two possibilities. So to talk someone up is the first, and to talk up. So the second is usually when the person is quiet. Okay, so for example, the classroom and the students, and one student is very quiet and they say nothing. So they have their mouth closed and they're very quiet. And the teacher asks the girl a question and the girl speaks very lowly. So it's almost a whisper, the volume is very low. And the teacher asks the girl to talk up. Okay, and that means to increase the volume. It's the same as to speak up, and it means to increase the sound when you speak. So that's number one. The second possibility is to talk someone up, which is different. And that means to increase the expectations. So probably the best translation is to increase the expectations. So the new cafe, the new restaurant, everybody's speaking about the new restaurant, but I talk up the new restaurant, or I talk the new restaurant up, or I talk the person up. So that means I increase the expectations with my comment. I say, wow, this is an incredible cafe. It's the best cafe in Dublin. The coffee is amazing. The food is amazing. So I increase the expectations. So to talk someone up is to increase expectations. And I suppose we have another possibility. To chat up is more situation in romantic situation. And it's a bit different. So the verb to chat up is in the romantic situation. So you go to the bar and you see a person that you like and you want to speak with that person, maybe with an interest for a date. So you chat up that person. So you have a conversation with the intention to be friends or to maybe organize a date the next time. So to chat up somebody is a famous expression as well. And here we have talk to, okay? And as I said, to talk someone up or to talk up is to increase the expectations. The next one is very famous, to talk down, to talk down to. This is associated with the preposition down, which is negative. Remember, usually there is emotion associated with the preposition. So talk up is positive, to increase. Talk down is negative, and it's appropriate in this explanation. So for example, if you talk down to this person, you think you are superior, your tone, your vocabulary is maybe in the superior sense compared to the other person. For example, the manager, it's very bad to talk down to the other person. So with the sentiment that this person is inferior. So it's negative because it's also rude, okay? So it is maybe rude to believe the other person is inferior. And that's very, very famous expression as well. So to talk down to the worker, to talk down to the staff. So it is difficult, but it is very, very common. Here you can see the preposition over. Okay, so to talk over is very important for two situations: to talk something over and to talk over. So the first example, in the restaurant, and the volume of the music in the restaurant is very high. For example, in the room here, maybe I can hear some noise from inside and the volume is high. So it's necessary for me to talk over this noise. So I need to increase my volume. I need to increase my voice. So I need to talk over the noise. in a debate, in a conversation, if you speak with your friend and your friend continues the conversation, but you interrupt your friend and you talk over your friend. So it is very, very typical. It is very flexible and it is very important. The second significance is to talk something over. And again, over is the movement, like this position. Remember, the game is over. It starts and finished. So if you talk something over, for example, the football match, this is the content and you talk over. So it means you discuss everything. So you discuss the start and you discuss the finish. So to talk something over is to have a complete debate and have a complete conversation about something. So it's very, very famous. You need to talk something over. You need time to make your decision. And here is the explanation: to talk something over, to discuss. And the example is, I hope my parents talk their relationship problems over before they get divorced. So it means to discuss in detail or to debate in detail, okay? Talk down, talk up, talk over. Talk about is more general. So if you talk about your friend, if you talk about your family, if you talk about somebody, it's like to gossip. And that's no problem as well, to gossip, to talk about. And that's very literal. There's no second significance there. It's just the most typical literal expression. And that's, I suppose, the most typical. So here you can see talk back is to maybe do it in a negative, or as I said, a rude manner. And then talk back to is the same. Talk over is to discuss. And they are the most typical possibilities with talk. Talk about, as I said, talk around. Yes, that's possible. So to talk someone around is famous and it is important, and it's the significance to maybe persuade or to convince. Okay, so for example, I decide I don't want to go to the meeting. So I don't want to go to the meeting, but my friend talks me around. So they change my opinion, they change my mind. So to talk someone around means you change the opinion of the other person. Okay, so that's very famous as well. And I think they're the most typical situations. So as I said, to talk around is there. And I think you can use the two possibilities, around or round, and they have the same significance really. It's to convince or to persuade. And I think they're all the prepositions. Talk through could be possible as well. And that is similar with the talk something over, is to discuss. And if you talk something through, it's the same as well. So for example, if you have a big decision and it's a very, very big decision and you need to speak with your friend for their opinion, you need to talk through the document, because the preposition a través is through. So you need to speak about all the detail of the problem. So you need to talk it through. So that's very famous as well. And I think they're the most typical with the preposition. So just to review, we have talk to, as I said. Talk up is to increase your volume. The second possibility is to talk somebody up, is to increase the expectation for the cafe. To talk down to is maybe when you think you are superior and you talk down to. And talk over is to discuss, and the same as to talk through. Okay, so they're almost the same. And also, I suppose, vocabulary, we have a walkie-talkie. And that's the object, like the mobile phone, very similar to the mobile phone, except it was maybe before the mobile phone, the big object where the police use the walkie-talkie and you need to press the button and talk. That's the specific vocabulary for that object, okay? And then, as I said, talk about is just literal. You want to discuss, you want to maybe gossip. Yes, we can say to talk behind someone's back, and that's very famous as well. So it's impolite, it's rude, it's to gossip when you talk behind someone's back. So this person has no idea and you chat behind that back. So you gossip behind that person's back, okay? There is another possibility, to talk someone down. And maybe this is related to a dangerous situation. So if you are going to do the action, so for example, you decide to finish the company, you decide to close the business, and you make the action tomorrow, but the workers or the staff try to convince the person to stop the action. So if you talk this person down, that means you prevent or you persuade them to stop doing the action. Okay, so to talk someone down is maybe to stop somebody doing the action, maybe in the very negative situations when the person wants to jump, maybe off the bridge because they don't feel good, and then their friend helps the person, they talk him down. So it's to prevent the person doing the action. So that's possible as well. As I said, to talk around, to talk someone around would be the same to persuade or to convince. And remember, yesterday we had the expression to twist, which is the same to convince somebody or to persuade somebody. And I suppose literal, to talk around, is similar to gossip. Okay, so if you're talking around the town, that means you're speaking to a lot of different people and you're maybe gossiping and chatting as well. So it's similar to gossip. So you can see the flexibility of the three. And I think that's the most typical expressions in relation to the verb to talk. The next one is to tear. Number one, you have to be clear of the difference between to tear and to rip. I think they are practically the same. So to tear your clothes, okay, or to rip your clothes are very, very typical. So we use it in the context of clothes, and we use it in the context of paper. For example, you have a contract, you have the contract on paper and you tear the contract or you rip the contract. And that means that you're not happy with the contract and you want to cancel the contract. So you rip, and we typically use the preposition up. So you rip up the contract or you tear up the contract. So it's typical with paper and typical with contract. We have more. So maybe with tear, we say to tear your ligaments. So in relation to sport and in relation to exercise, if you have a problem with your muscle, you tear your muscle or you tear your ligament. Okay, that's very typical as well. And it is possible in relation to muscle, you can pull the muscle. Okay, and that means the same as well. So you're exercising and you have a little problem and you pull your muscle, you have damage to the muscle. And as I said, to tear would be related to the ligament. Okay, so really important just in relation to the context, the difference between to tear and to pull. It's important because in Spanish, you think you say romper a llorar. So romper a llorar is really in English to start, to cry, but romper is like to break, and to tear is also very, very similar to break. So it's interesting, the translation, because with break, we maybe say for bones, we say connection, maybe an object you break, but to tear or to rip are used in other situations. I think in Spanish, you say romper las ropas is to rip the clothes, but literally it will be to break. But in English, we never say to break the clothes. Romper is different in Spanish to English, and that's the reason it's important. So this is the connection. In English, llorar is the verb to cry, and lagrima in Espanol is a tear. So in English, lagrima is a tear, and probably this is connected to the connection with romper. So a tear is in relation to when you cry, you have a tear, lagrima, okay? And important pronunciation as well. The past is irregular, so the verb is to tear, and the past is tore, so it's irregular. And also we have a phrasal verb, to tear down, which means to demolish. Okay, so if you tear down, the significance is you demolish, tear down the building, and that means just to demolish or to ruin or to destroy. Okay, we have another expression, we say on the tear, and that's typical for the party when you want to have a great night, when you want to really visit a lot of pubs, a lot of places, and you have a lot of motivation, you are on the tear. And that's a very famous informal expression to say that you want to have a crazy celebration. Okay, so we say to be ready for a crazy celebration. It's very typical in conversation, very informal, but really a big part of learning English is to recognize the typical expressions. Okay, And as I said, typical for the contract, you tear up the contract or you rip up the contract. So it is possible with the phrasal verb to tear up or to rip up. And also you can say ripped jeans, which is typical as well, the type of clothes when the jeans or the trousers are ripped. And very important. So here we have a phrasal verb tear down, which is to destroy. And you can see the example here. The country decided to tear down the dilapidated, very difficult vocabulary, dilapidated school. And the significance is it's derelict. In English, we have good vocabulary. You can say derelict, or you can say dilapidated, and very, very difficult vocabulary, but typical in that situation for the school or the building. So they decided to tear down the school and construct or build a new one. Okay. And maybe another preposition, tear through, could be literal as well. For example, I tear through my jacket is possible. Tear down, yeah. Tear over, no. So they're the most typical expressions we have with tear and rip. Okay, so just a very important explanation between the two. Here you can see tear up, which is small pieces like the contract. And the example, I always, siempre, tear up my personal papers before I throw them out. So to throw something out is to remove, and we have some expressions in relation to this. So we say to throw out is to maybe throw away. We say the same. And we have a very important expression. We say to get rid of, which is to remove. So for example, this bottle, I don't want this bottle, so I get rid of this bottle. I throw away this bottle. But get rid is exactly the same, to remove. And very important, for example, the influenza, the flu. If you're very sick on Monday, you take medicine to get rid of your flu. Okay, there is a verb as well, to rid yourself of the flu. So it's flexible and it's very, very important. Also here in relation to the paper, the personal paper, the confidential paper, you tear up. But we have another verb that's very important in this case. We say to shred. Okay, so to shred is the specific vocabulary we use for the paper. When you put the paper in the machine to destroy, that is the verb to shred. Okay, and the object is a shredder. And you can use this in other situations as well. To shred your jacket, to shred your shirt is the same as to rip or to destroy. And then there is another expression as well, a shred of evidence. So for example, you do not have a shred of evidence, and the significance is you do not have even one piece of evidence. So related to the paper, when the paper is separated because of the shredder, you do not have one shred of evidence. The significance is you do not even have one piece of evidence. Okay, it's different from the verb to shed, which is advanced also, and to shed is to lose. So you can shed weight, you can shed hair, typical for the dog, to lose the hair. So they're typical verbs, a little advanced, but very important, to shred and to shed. Okay, a bit more confusing because there is an expression to shed a tear. When you cry, it means that you are crying. So it's an expression that you are shedding tears. It means that you are crying. Okay, so that's another advanced way to say the same thing, como romper a llorar. Good. Okay, and the next one is tell. Okay, so I'll just explain some other phrasal verbs with the verb to tell. Probably there's not a lot. So obviously we say tell a story. So basically the difference and the most important point in relation to tell and say, with say, we have the preposition to. You say to your friend, I say to you. But the difference with tell, there's no preposition. So I tell you, you tell your friend, he tells his friend. So with tell, there's no preposition. And with say, we use the preposition to say to. Okay. In relation to a tale or a story, to tell a tale, and a person is a telltale. That's a very famous expression for a substantivo, or a noun is the person who gossips, the person who violates the trust. So if you have confidence with a person and you ask the person to keep the secret, but the person tells the other person That's a telltale, okay? Or maybe to invent a story, typical in school. When the child is a telltale, the child tells the story to the teacher and the other friend is in trouble. Okay, so that's a very famous expression as well, a telltale. Okay, the phrasal verb to tell off is very important and is very typical. So off is typical for the movement. Again, the position, you are here, and like tell off. So this expression is when you criticize, as you can see here, criticize a person severely, or in English they say reprimand. Okay, so for example, the parent tells the child off, or the teacher tells the child off, and they're very angry and they're very critical. And the other phrasal verb from before is to give out to. So that's the same. If you give out to the child, if the teacher gives out to the student, they are angry, and it's similar to criticize, and to tell off would be exactly the same. Okay, so here you can see the example. Carolina, in the past it's irregular, so the verb is to tell, and the past is told. The participle is told as well, so it's tell, told, told. So Carolina told me off, so she was very angry. She criticized her a lot when she found out. So remember, that's another phrasal verb. To find out is to discover, and it's the past, it's irregular. When she discovered I was gossiping about her. Okay, so that's another example, to tell off. Other prepositions, to tell back, not really. To tell under, no. To tell over, no. So there's not too many possibilities. There is another situation, to tell a fib, which is very informal but very common. So a fib is another word for a lie. So for example, if the child is telling fibs, that means they're telling lies. Okay, and there is a verb as well, to fib, and the person is a fibber. So that's probably very common vocabulary, and it is very, very typical, maybe difficult when you're learning English. So the significance is to tell a lie or to tell tales. And it's very typical probably in Dublin or Ireland compared to other countries for this vocabulary. I'm not sure if it's used in other countries, but it is very typical here to tell a fib. Okay, so that's the phrasal verb to tell off. And yeah, there is another one as well connected with the preposition on. So to tell on me, to tell on your friend is the same situation in school. So the friends, there's one bad incident, one bad moment. And for example, the child breaks the window in the school. So it's a disaster. The child breaks the window and the other child sees the action, and the child has to make the decision to tell the teacher or to say nothing. So in that case, the verb we say is the child tells on the boy, and it means to report, I suppose, is the best translation, or to reveal the truth about the story. Okay, so if the child tells on the other boy, the significance is they report, and you can see the explanation here: to report a crime or bad behavior. So the example: every time I did something wrong when I was a child, that's very important. In the past, when I was a child, my sister would tell on me. So she would report me. She would explain the bad story to maybe the parent or the teacher. That's very, very famous. Also, we can say, if you cannot identify the sentiment, for example, I cannot tell if he is at home. That means I cannot identify if he is here. I cannot tell. It's impossible to, because you have no evidence. Okay, and I think there's no other possibility with phrasal verbs and tell, and I think they're the most typical, as I said. The next one is the verb to think, and I think we have a lot of phrasal verbs with the verb to think. So just to show you the next page here, you can see the next one. We have a lot of possible phrasal verbs with the verb to think, but I will leave that until the next session. So I'll just close this one, and you can see here we have the idioms. So this document is the second document, and it's from expressions or for idioms. And yesterday, I think we finished with the true colors, and that was the last expression. So the famous song is related to true colors. So the true colors of the person, is the real character or the real personality of the person. So we have a few expressions. And as I said the last day, you can see his or her true colors really means the real personality, because maybe on the outside, the appearance is maybe different, but after time to familiarize yourself with the person, you can see the real character. So you can see the true colors. And the expression, I suppose, from the song is true colors shining through. That's the famous lyric from the song. And remember, the difference between through is a través, and the other word is true, which is verdad. And also we say though, which is aunque. And we have another word, thoroughly, which is very important as well. So these three words are key and a bit difficult. So this is for contrast. So you are happy in Ireland, though the weather is very bad. It's like aunque in Espanol, but this one is very important. It's the adverb thoroughly, but the adjective is thorough. The pronunciation is a bit difficult as well, and it means complete. So if you have a thorough investigation, a thorough examination, it means an absolutely complete investigation or a complete examination. They test every part, okay? So the typical adverb is I thoroughly enjoyed the party, I thoroughly enjoyed the meeting, and it means you completely, absolutely enjoyed. So it's very fluent, it's very common, but some people confuse the three words through, though, thorough. Okay, so it's just important vocabulary. And I suppose the second example here, the next expression is to turn back the hands of time. Okay, so you can turn back time, which is more literal, and that means to reverse time. So it's impossible to turn back time. So it's impossible to reverse time. But this expression is a little extra because they say turn back the hands of time, because in the clock, we say the hand, we say the big hand and the small hand. So that's the specific vocabulary for the clock. And that's the reason we say to turn back the hands of time. And it's just a comfortable, fluent expression as well. The next expression is probably understandable as well in other languages as well. I think in Espanol it's Universidad de la Vida. So in English it's the same. The University of Life is the typical joke that maybe you attended the University of Life. So it's a joke that you did not maybe attend the typical universities, but you have a lot of experience from other situations. And yesterday, or in the previous class, we had another expression. We say the school hard knocks. And for example, the verb is to knock, and we typically use it on the door. If you knock on the door like this, okay, knock, knock. And also it's another possibility for a hit or an impact. So if you're playing sport and you have a knock on your arm, it's like an impact or a hit. So this is the context here. The school of hard knocks means the school of difficult impacts. Okay, so if like the verb to reject, or if you have a bad moment, that's a knock. Okay, you can say a knock to your confidence, which means an impact or a hit as well. So the school of hard knocks means that you had a lot of difficult experiences, and that's really the way you learned in life. So not exactly academic, it's more personal experience as well. So that's a famous expression as well. But here it's a synonym for the University of Life, I suppose. So it's a good expression. And you can see we're on the letter U. So the next one is another expression as well. Hell, I think, is infierno. And the expression is until, hasta. And then the verb is to freeze, which I think is called, not colgar, but it's related to the water. When the water changes to ice, that's the verb to freeze. And the object is a freezer. In the kitchen, you have the freezer for the meat, for the food, and the opposite is a fridge. So there's obviously two departments. You have the fridge for the milk, for the water, and then you have the freezer for the meat. And we have the adjective as well. Freezing means very, very cold. You are freezing. And there are two adjectives really, frozen and freezing, and they are very typical for adjectives. For food, we typically say frozen for the adjective, okay? So frozen meat, frozen vegetables, and freezing is maybe the gerundio in the present continuous. I am freezing the food, so it's the action, But the second possibility for the adjective is for your temperature, for the person. So if you are freezing, it's maybe informal that you are very, very cold as well. Okay, so there's two adjectives. The verb is to freeze and the past is froze. Okay, so it's irregular verb as well. And typical in the movies, typical in the series, for the police, they say freeze, and that means do not move. Maybe for the teacher in the school, for the children, freeze means no movement. And I think in Spanish, you maybe have the same word, I think. So that's very important. So the expression, until hell freezes over, because hell is very hot and the temperature is really, really hot, it's impossible for it to freeze. And this is the expression that it's not going to happen. Okay, so it's improbable, it's unlikely, and that's the expression. So, for example, sport, Atletico Madrid will not win the Champions League, will win the Champions League, will not until hell freezes over. So you can use it in lots of situations. There is another expression, to go to hell, which is maybe an insult. So it's like go away or leave me alone, but it's a bit stronger and it means go to hell. So it's a bit strong insult. But I suppose the other expression is to go to hell and back. And that means to go through, a través, to go through a difficult time and then return. So to go to hell and back means that you had an extremely difficult time, an extremely difficult moment, and then you return to, you survive, I suppose, okay? So that's a famous expression. There is another possibility. We say to hell with it, and that means when you do not want to do the activity, you consider all the options, and there's a lot of pros, a lot of cons, a lot of positives, a lot of negatives, and then eventually you say, okay, don't worry, I will take the action. So we say to hell with it, I will do it. So I don't care for the cost, I don't care for the possible consequences. To hell with it, I will do it. So that's possible as well. And they're very, very typical expressions as well. The other possibility here is up in smoke. And that means if something to go up in smoke is a typical expression in relation to fire. And when the house, for example, or the room or the building goes up in smoke, the significance is it's destroyed because of fire. Okay, so to go up in smoke is to be destroyed because of fire. And that's the famous expression as well, I think. There is another possibility. It is up in the air. And that means that there's no certainty, a lot of doubt. It's very unsure. So everything is up in the air. Everything is uncertain. Everything has a lot of doubt. And I think in Spanish and other languages, you have the same translation. So they're the two or three possible expressions here. And they're the most common as well. So I think in relation to hell, it would be they're the most common expressions. And we say, for example, a hell of a weekend. Confusingly, this is different, okay? So it is confusing because hell is usually negative, hell is usually bad, but it is possible to say a hell of, and you can say a hell of a weekend, a hell of a party, a hell of a movie, and it means an incredible movie, an incredible party, an incredible weekend. So it's confusing because hell is normally negative, but here we say a hell of a time, and that means an incredible weekend, okay? So I think that's just some of the vocabulary from today. And again, they are idioms. And I suppose just to continue a little, I will look at this article. So this is very, very difficult because it's from the National Geographic and the vocabulary is very advanced. And this article in particular is difficult. It's in relation to animals and the different vocabulary. So I'll just read maybe one or two paragraphs to show you some difficult vocabulary. So the title here, it's a specific type of sheep. And remember, of course, you have irregular. You say one sheep and two sheep. So we have a lot of irregular plurals. So example, we say 1 foot and 2 feet, 1 tooth, 2 teeth. So in English, there's a lot of irregular plurals. And this is another example of this. The preposition is al lado, along. Okay, so it's almost the same as beside, but it's like parallel. So if you walk along the river, the significance is you walk parallel to the river. And in this case, the highway is maybe more common in the United States, and in Ireland or in England, they might say the motorway, or in Europe as well, como autopista. Okay, so a motorway and a highway, as I said, highway is probably more common in the United States. Okay, and the motorway is maybe more common here. And then it's a particular place here you can see, and it's the national park, and there's no problem with the vocabulary there. Here is specific vocabulary for the animal. I think the bison is a type of animal, and the bear. So of course you need to be very important, very aware with the pronunciation. A bear, there is a verb to bear. There is a different word, a beer. We say a beard and a bird. So this is very important for pronunciation, in particularly at the beginning. So obviously the bird is the animal in the sky, and the pronunciation is a bit different. A bird, una barba en español is a beard. Okay, so if you have a beard, it's una barba, and then cerveza is a beer, and then a bear is como un oso. So there are 4 words that are very, very similar, but this is typically confusing for a lot of people, particularly at the start. Also, the verb to bear is like to carry and to tolerate. Okay, so for example, if you're bearing a lot of responsibility, that means you're carrying, como llevar, a lot of responsibility, and also tolerate. So if you cannot bear the weather, that means you cannot tolerate the situation. Okay, so it's flexible. Here in the introduction, they say a perfect time to head out, and that really means to depart or to leave. So for example, you are at home, and at 6 o'clock you will head out, and that means just to go. So obviously head is cabeza, but it is a verb to head. For example, I am heading to the shop. That means I am going to the shop. So the verb to head is very important, and it means to go. Heading to the cinema, heading to the shop, heading on holidays. So the significance is to go. And here it's the phrasal verb to head out. And the significance of the preposition out is because of your location. You are in the house and you head out. Okay. It is possible as well to head off, and that means maybe to leave. Okay. So if you head off at 6 o'clock, that means you leave or depart as well. There is a more advanced possibility to head off, and that's like to mitigate. I think there's a verb to mitigate, which is very advanced, and probably this is a very difficult structure, but just to keep it in mind as well. And in the first paragraph, I want to show some vocabulary here. So this word throughout is very, very important, and it's like durante todo, throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the year, and it means during all the day, during all the week, during all the year, also for time, but also for location, throughout the city. And here it's the country, throughout the United States, and that means in every part of the country. Okay, so it's very, very important. Also related to the vocabulary previously, we said through, though, thoroughly, through, and we also have another one, throughout. So there's very similar words in English, especially with pronunciation, but the detail is very important. The next verb is to flock, and here it's the present continuous are flocking. It's happening at the moment. So the verb is to flock, and it's the specific vocabulary we use with the animals and maybe with the birds. So when the birds travel together, they flock together. So specific vocabulary. Also, we say a flock is one name for the group of birds, and it's used in other situations like a metaphor. For example, the restaurant, people are flocking to the restaurant, and that means people are moving very quickly. Similar movement from the birds, so they're moving very quickly to the restaurant because it's probably very popular. Okay, and I suppose again, similarly informal, you can use your flock maybe as your group of friends, maybe, or your group of family. Okay, another verb as well is creeping, and the verb is maybe in the situation when the house is very quiet or the apartment is very quiet, and one person tries to enter the house like a secret, so they're very, very quiet. So the verb is to creep. Okay, and it means to move very, very slowly. Okay, and very, very important, very typical, but maybe in relation to social media, it's a negative and an insult. If the person is a creep, it's maybe they're looking at the profile, they're investigating the person, but very secret. So it's possibly negative as well. And maybe you can say summer or maybe winter is creeping in, and that means winter is slowly appearing. So it's moving very slowly. Winter, it's starting to appear. So winter is creeping in, okay? Very, very good. And maybe in the military, they can say mission creep, which is another possible expression. So for example, the army entered a city, or the army entered a country with an objective, but after time, the objective changes and they move more. Okay, so that's possible expression as well. The next one is important as well, ambling. So there is a verb to amble, and it means to walk. So we have lots of vocabulary as well. We say to ramble and to amble, which is all very, very same. It's probably Latin origin. And we have to stroll or to wander. So there's lots of vocabulary to describe types of walks, and to amble is maybe just relaxing, very comfortable type of walk. To ramble is the same. It's like no direction, but we use this for walking, and we also use it for talking. So for if a person is rambling, that means they're speaking a lot, okay? So for example, he or she is rambling, maybe rambling on, and that means continuing to talk with maybe no direction, no focus. And it's the same with walking. If you're rambling, you're moving with no direction. It's just maybe enjoyable. And the same with ramble. So there's very little difference between the two, to amble and to ramble. Maybe ramble is more common, and here it's like moving with no direction. And that's the significance with the animals. So they're moving with no direction. Fort is a bit formal, and it means like forward. So yesterday we had the expression to go back and forth, and that means the direction to go back and forward. Okay, but it's a bit more formal. It's a bit more definitely formal. And here, ambling forth means moving forward, but it's very, very sophisticated. Baby steps is a typical expression. So in your career or in your recovery, you make baby steps. It's like little steps. It's not big improvement, it's baby steps. Maybe with language, you can make baby steps, and that means you make small improvement with the language, okay? And that's it. Here we have the modal verb, and remember, might is for possibility, could, may, and might are for possibilities. But the rule with the modal verb, the next verb is the infinitive with no preposition. Might go, may have, may see, could see. That's the rule with the modal verb. The next verb is the infinitive, but we eliminate to, the preposition, okay? And here we have another modal verb. Can is for ability and possibility. You can see, you can go. It's your ability and your permission, okay? But again, the next verb normally is the infinitive, to go, to eat, but because the modal is here, we eliminate to. That's the rule with modal verbs. So that's just a little example of vocabulary from an article. And as I said, we had the phrasal verbs and we had the idioms before. So I think that's a lot of good work for today. You can see the vocabulary here on the right, and I will put the vocabulary below the video at the end of the class on Facebook. And this video is intended for Facebook, and it's intended for YouTube, and also some people are watching live on Zoom. So thank you for connecting. The plan today, I think at 4 o'clock, there's another class dedicated to the business English vocabulary. That's today, and you can see the schedule here at the bottom, okay? In the morning, there's the speaking group at 9 o'clock, and the free classes will continue at 11:15. That's the plan, probably for next week as well. Tomorrow, the webinar is at 1 p.m. in relation to the B2 certificate, okay? And then, as I said, everything is free. So I just see we have a question, and I'm going to check the chat. You're very welcome, everybody. So on the left, you can see the possibilities if you want to make a small donation or a small tip. There are 3 possibilities. The first one is with the bank details directly. There's the IBAN. So that's one possibility. There's no commission compared to the PayPal. The second possibility is the application Revolut, which is very popular. You just need the mobile phone number. And the third possibility is Bizum, which is very popular as well. So that's all the information if you want to make a small donation or a small tip. And thank you everybody who has supported me already. And thank you for watching. I hope that you have a good day and enjoy the rest of your Friday. So thank you so much, and talk to you all soon. Bye bye.